All right, guys and girls, today we're going to talk about The Road Not Taken. It is going to be our last poem in Unit 7. This is a poem by a man named Robert Frost. And along with this poem, we're going to be talking about things like meter, rhyme scheme, paraphrasing, and analyzing ideas. The picture you see here is the picture from your book. It's a painting by William Samuel Jay. It doesn't tell me when exactly it was painted, but you can enjoy it in color here since the copy I made you is in black and white. Our poet for this piece is a man named Robert Frost, and this is quite an old picture of him. He was born in 1874 and died in 1963, which means he was 89 years old when he died. In that time, he wrote 105 poems, I guess, that we know of. You know, who knows if there's some still waiting to be discovered. But he was a very, very popular poet. People really, really liked him. He was named America's Poet Laureate before such a thing even existed. And a poet laureate is like the official poet of the country so he was the official poet of America. He was so well liked and popular that the state of Vermont named a mountain after him. And he was actually the first poet ever invited to recite at a presidential inauguration. And now you'll see different poets at all of the inaugurations, so he kind of started a tradition there. As a poet, though, he was kind of a puzzle. He was this modern guy at the time who really still liked to stick to those traditional roots, that rhyme scheme, that meter, that verse. He really liked those things that created that rhythm and that flow to the poetry. But at the same time, he kept his poems very vague. Like they can mean anything to anybody, which is probably why they were so popular at the time, because he didn't really create a clear picture of this is exactly what I mean as I go along through it. So we're going to watch actually a video. I found the poem acted out by this guy on YouTube. You'll notice the poem is broken into 4 stanzas. Each stanza has 5 lines. And after we watch the video and read through the poem here, we're going to kind of break that up and kind of look at the pieces a little bit differently. So you can watch the video here and enjoy what's going on.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference.
All right, so I liked that kind of visual play on the poem, so that now you can kind of really see what's going on and sort of get a better idea of what it is that Frost's trying to say here. So now that we've read the poem, let's go through and break it down. Okay, we're going to start with meter. To find meter, we're going to read the following lines out loud and tap our feet at each stressed syllable. The question becomes how many stressed syllables are in each line. So the first stanza is what I've used here for all the examples. So we're really going to look at the first stanza real deeply. He writes, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Now, if you remember from our Shakespeare poem, the first thing we have to do to find meter is to break all of the words into syllables. Okay, and when we do that, it looks like this. Now you'll notice that Frost didn't use very many multisyllable words, which makes our job easy right here. I've got diverged, yellow, sorry, travel, traveler, and undergrowth. And that's about it. So it's not too bad. Now comes the little bit harder part. As we read the poem, as we read the line, we have to decide which syllables get that heavy stress, that boot, as opposed to the ballet slipper that we talked about in the notes video. So, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood. Now I hear roads pretty heavy. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood. So I'm going to say roads, urged, yell, and wood. Okay, and then if you keep doing that same thing through the rest, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then it looks like this, with the stressed syllables capitalized. Okay, so what we have to do next is to count, right? I count 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 4 there. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each line has 4 stressed syllables. Okay, we'll talk about what that means in just a second, but just so you remember, each line has 4 stressed syllables. Now, what kind of syllables are they? Or what kind of sets are they here? Okay, this first one, just like what Shakespeare used, is called an iamb. That's with that unstressed and then the stressed syllable right next to it. And so he has an iamb, another iamb, and an iamb at the end. So your question in your brain probably is, so what's that middle one, that in a yell, right? Well, that is something we call anapest. And Frost is really actually fairly rhythmic about using iambs. He uses four feet in each line, and most of them are going to be iambs. Okay? Some of the lines have a rogue anapest in them, like these. Okay? But for the most part, he uses the iamb. So if we combine the iamb with the fact that there's 4 feet in each line, then we get something called iambic tetrameter. Okay, so 2-syllable repeats is an iambic, 4 repeats is a tetrameter, so that's what we're going to call Frost's meter, is iambic tetrameter. Okay, as opposed to Shakespeare's, which was iambic pentameter, which means there were 5 repeats. All right, as far as rhyme scheme, now remember, okay, this was a couple poems ago, but to find rhyme scheme, we decide which end words rhyme with each other. The first line gets marked with an A, as well as all of its rhyming words. The next gets marked with a B, and then all its rhyming words. So the rhyme scheme then is marked on the side for you as you go through each stanza. I did the first stanza for you. I underlined all the end words. Would, both, stood, could, undergrowth. I labeled would with an A, as well as stood and could, because they all rhyme together. And then both rhymes with undergrowth, so those get marked with a B. Now I notice that in this poem I've got an AB, AAB rhyme scheme. Okay, and you will notice that this goes all the way through the poem, and every stanza follows the same rhyme scheme, AB, AAB. Okay, and that's just one of those things that makes Frost seem like a more traditional poet, is we've got a pretty traditional meter, a pretty traditional rhyme scheme. Okay, and so those are the things that make him that kind of a puzzle of a poet that people, didn't quite get, but loved nonetheless. Um, our next skill here is our reading skill, our main idea, finding ideas in poetry. So you have a chart on your worksheet that organizes the main ideas. We've gone through the 7 ages of man. Hopefully that one is already done. So now we're going to do the bottom half of that worksheet for the road not taken. Again, I use stanza 1. It reads, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth." Now, with poems where we're looking at stanzas, it's often a lot easier to paraphrase the stanza before we try and find the main idea. Because if I just look at this, it's kind of difficult to figure out what he's really trying to say until I put the words into more understandable language. So a paraphrase for this stanza might look like this. And again, you could do it in any way you want to. This is just how I paraphrased it. So I took that first line, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood," and I made it sound like this. "Walking in the woods one fall day, I came to a place where the path split two ways. Unfortunately, because I was only one person, I could not walk down both paths. For a long time, I looked as far down one path as I could to where it curved in the woods." Okay, so the beginning of this poem is really just this guy or girl, we don't know, the speaker, standing in the woods at a place where the path splits, right? And looking down the path to see which one he or she should take. So that becomes then our main idea. The main idea then for the first stanza is just very simply that the speaker needs to decide which of the two paths to take. Okay, and then as you go on to stanzas 2, 3, and 4, you're going to kind of find out what the decision was and why that decision was made and what are the outcomes of that decision. So as you go, as you read through stanzas 2, 3, and 4, if you want to write a paraphrase down on paper, that's fine. You don't have to. You can do it in your head too. But try then and find the main idea out of that paraphrase and try and figure out what is really going on here. And remember, the main idea should be down to maybe a sentence or two at the very most, but try and get it into one sentence because that's really all we need for a main idea. Okay, so that is The Road Not Taken. It is probably one of my very favorite poems. I had to actually memorize it in high school. Maybe I should make you memorize it too. I guess we'll see. All right, if you have any questions, please come see me, or you can email me. Thank you very much. This concludes Unit 7.